from today's lens, the man is a harasser. Like there's no other word for it. He doesn't assault anyone. But there is a great deal of coercion that goes on that I guess we thought was charming in the 80s and 90s. It doesn't read now. Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit. I'm Tracie Decker, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I'll be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1980s and 90s sitcom Cheers with my sister, Emily Birken, and with you. Before we dive in, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, listener, if you have not yet, please follow the show on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. When you do, you help other listeners find us. It is a free and easy way for you to help us grow the show. Thanks. Okay, Em, let's dive in. This show was always on at our house when we were growing up. So I know you've seen episodes, many episodes, because it was sort of, must-see TV that was a marketing slogan, but it was legit at our house. What do you remember? What's in your head about Cheers?
Boston Bar. The theme song is iconic. Yeah. Ted Danson playing Sam Malone. He was a retired, I think, pitcher, but baseball player.
That's right.
Who owned the bar. Sam Malone seems like the perfect retired baseball player name. Like there's something about the writers, they found the perfect name. I remember there's Diane, played by Shelley Long, who ends up stuck working there. I feel like her fiance abandoned her or something like that in the first episode. I know the first episode is considered by many in television writing to be like the best pilot episode ever written. From there are certain things like the fact that when Norm comes in, everyone shouts Norm, and that is something that is stuck in my head. So my 12-year-old, one of the things that I have done in summers to try to encourage him to get out of the house is I'll give him cash and say, ride your bike down to the Dairy Queen. And so sometime last summer, I ended up going to Dairy Queen with him, and it's owned by an extended family of just lovely people. And so when I came into the Dairy Queen, it was a Norm moment. They called my son's name.
They yelled your son's name.
And they're like, oh, he comes in all the time. Very nice boy. He leaves his bike out. And that feels like it's part of the cultural consciousness. That's that Norm moment. There's Cliff Clavin, the postal employee, who's always in his uniform. And I have wondered if that's legal. Shouldn't he have changed? There's Carla, played by Rhea Perlman, who was always my favorite character because she is just so sassy. Then there's a Coach, who I think was Sam's coach and is not the brightest bulb, but is just such a sweetheart. And then in later seasons, after the actor who played Coach, I think, passed away, Woody Harrelson, who played Woody, took over. Oh, Frasier and was it Lilith? Lilith, who were very condescending and intellectual, kept coming to the bar. They were regulars at the bar as well. So there's all these characters that are in my head. And then there's some jokes that have lived rent-free in my head for a very long time. So there's one where I remember it was one of the cold opens where Woody was at the bar and the radio was on, and the radio was saying, would you like to earn more money? You could become and I'm forgetting the word, but the typist who takes notes in the court.
Stenographer.
You could become a stenographer. And so it's saying the phone number, and it's saying it relatively slowly, and he's having a really hard time writing the numbers down. And because I was a literal child, it took me an unreasonable amount of time to get the joke. But by the time I did, I was just like, oh, that is funny. And then there was another one also involving Woody where he was saying, do you want to play? It's 12 Angry Men, but we don't have enough cast members. So there's only 6 of us and we have to be twice as angry. And I didn't get it because I didn't know what 12 Angry Men was about. So things like that live rent free in my head. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of the show, and that's about what I've got. So tell me, why are we talking about it today?
Yeah, I don't remember what made me put it on the list, but like I said in the open, we watched the heck out of this show. It just was always on. It was just sort of background noise along. I mean, there were other shows like that, but Cheers in particular. And I hadn't seen it in a really long time. And there was, I think, an episode of The Good Place where Ted Danson ends up behind a bar and like tosses a rag over his shoulder. And like I had this like swell of nostalgia for Cheers because of that episode of The Good Place. And so it's kind of, I think it's been closer to the front of my mind for a while. And so it just seemed like time to go back and see how it holds up. I also recently took a vacation where I had lots of time on an airplane. So I had more time to like binge some episodes than, our usual weekly, I've got 2 hours to watch a movie. So that's a combination of like very practical reasons why we're doing it now and just the nostalgia from The Good Place a couple years ago. So I think what's at stake is that like there's a lot of nostalgia in this TV show for me. A lot of like romantic notions that I think around Sam and Diane that shaped like little baby Tracie, because this thing ran from 82 to 93.
That was going to be my next question is
we were quite young when we were watching. I mean, into adolescence, right? I was 17. I turned 17 in 93. And so like, that's like prime time to like build an understanding of romance. And so the on again, off again that happened and the sort of enemies to lovers that Sam and Diane did, I think was very formative for me, which is slightly disturbing now. But those are some of the things that are at stake. So before I give you a little bit of a recap, which it was 11 seasons and like almost 275 episodes, I'm not going to give you like a full recap.
I don't think that would be possible.
Certainly not in our 50 to 60 minute show. But before I even sort of do the characters and remind you of how they were related, let me give you some postcards. I want to talk a bit about gender and gender roles, especially given what I said about Sam and Diane. And there was a class difference and an intellectual difference between Sam and Diane that I think is worth like pulling apart and examining. And not just Sam and Diane, but Diane and the whole rest of the bar. Frasier, who gets his own spinoff at the end of the 11, who you remember him and his wife Lilith, he was a former fiance of Diane's. And so that's how he ends up as a part of the bar family. And some of that dynamic is really, some of the anti-intellectualism that I think comes up in this TV show comes through Frasier and Frasier wanting to fit in. I want to get into that a little bit if I have time. While we're talking about gender roles, there's kind of at least two eras. There's the Diane era and the Rebecca era with Kirstie Alley as Rebecca Howe. And I think both sort of give with one hand and take with the other in terms of the feminist question mark. And so I want to talk about the ways in which it gives with one hand and takes with the other with the Kirstie Alley era and the Diane era. I also want to talk about Carla, your favorite character played by Rhea Perlman, and sort of how she fits in this whole question of gender and sexuality, because in many ways she's one of the guys. She's also unapologetically sexual, but So she's like an interesting question. I want to talk about her a bit. And there are commentators who sort of talk about one of the reasons that this sitcom succeeded for as long and as much as it did was because the characters were not just cardboard cutouts. I think that's true. And I'd like to examine that a little bit. It will probably still be largely within the question of gender and gender roles, because I think Sam is the one that I really want to talk about, but we'll see where that conversation goes. There's a lot more that will probably end up in the shit we forgot to say, but those are some postcards to start because I really want to get into the analysis. So you remember the characters pretty well. You named all of the actors of the characters you named, except for Cliff Clavin, who is played by John Ratzenberger. So I just wanted to name his actor.
George Wendt is the one actor.
George Wendt plays Norm.
Plays Norm, yeah.
That's right. George Wendt plays Norm. And Kelsey Grammer plays Frasier. And Bebe Neuwirth is Lilith.
Yes.
So,
and I don't know who played Coach.
Oh, I don't either. The character's name was Ernie Pantuso. Nicholas Colasanto played Coach Ernie Pantuso. And before I get into my analysis, I want to shout out a Redditor who goes by the handle Legreep Creep. Legreap Creep, 2 E's. And I was overwhelmed by 11 seasons and 273 episodes. And so I Googled what are the best episodes. Mm-hmm. And Legreep Creep on Reddit has done an abridged episode watch list that allows you to get the plot points and some of the top episodes without watching all 273. I still didn't watch even all of the ones that Legreep Creep recommends because they're 80. But it was very helpful to me. And so I just wanted to shout out to Legreep Creep. Thank you so much for your efforts. I will link to this Reddit post that I use. So, okay, I wanted to make sure I give that shout out. Thank you, Legreep Creep. And thank you, Reddit.
Those words have never been said.
Thank you, Legreep Creep. Thank you, Reddit.
Thank you, Reddit. Have never been said before in human history.
That is not true. That is not true. It's very useful. Okay. Maybe you are the asshole. Okay. So you remember the characters pretty well. So I'm going to sort of name the characters and how they are interrelated to one another. Okay. So our primary protagonist is Sam Malone. Sam Mayday Malone, who is a retired pitcher. He was a relief pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. He was relatively famous in his day, and his career ended because of his drinking. And he now runs a bar. So he is both a recovering alcoholic and a bartender, which seems like a really dangerous combination, but they address that in that pilot episode. He bought the bar before he gave up drinking, and now, it's sort of what he does. But the fact that he's recovering is an important piece of his identity. He falls off the wagon at one point during the 11 seasons. It's a thing. He is a womanizer in 80s terms. He always has a new date. He's a handsome man and has, I guess, charm. And throughout the show, at any given episode, he has at least one, often up to 3 different dates in any given episode. That's an important piece of his character. At one point toward the end of the 11th season, he says that he slept with over 1,000 women.
Ew.
So that's Sam Mayday Malone. In the pilot episode, you remember correctly, Diane comes in to the bar with her fiance, Sumner Sloan, who is her professor. She's a graduate student, and she has been his research assistant for 2 years, and they are going to Barbados to get married. And he wants to go reclaim his grandmother's ring from his ex-wife so he can give it to her. And she's very uncomfortable being in the bar. He leaves her in the bar to go talk to Barbara, his ex. And shenanigans ensue as they sort of, make fun of this uncomfortable, stuffy woman. And ultimately, as you remember, Sumner leaves her for his ex-wife. And Sam actually shows quite a lot of insight, which the writers sort of make you believe that's because he's a bartender, so he's observing human behavior all the time. So he actually predicts that Sumner is going to leave her. And he also says, well, you need a job because you can't go back to work for him now. That was your job. And ends up offering her a job as a waitress. It makes sense in the pilot. And so that's how she ends up working. The other players in the bar are Carla Tortelli, played by Rhea Perlman. She has 8 kids by the end of the 11 seasons. 4 of them are born during the run of the show. So she's often pregnant. She is a single mother. She's divorced from the first 4 kids. I because I didn't watch 100% of the episodes, I'm not completely clear on exactly who the dads are for all of these kids. If they're all Nick's or if only most of any, it doesn't matter really. She is a super fan, sports fan, which is part of the reason that she is in this bar working for Sam. She's very much one of the guys. She's just as snarky. She can dish out the ribbing better than the guys do. And she enjoys Sam's exploits as much as the male patrons. She also has the hots for Sam. Nothing ever happens between them. And that's something that I want to get into. And she's just tough as nails and unapologetically abrasive.
Mm-hmm. That's why I liked her.
So Coach Ernie Pantuso was in fact Sam's coach. And he is the heart of, and later his replacement Woody is sort of the heart of the bar where everybody loves him and he loves everybody. And he's not real bright, as you remember. And they imply that's because he's taken a few too many baseballs to the head.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just really sweet. And so he often will intervene in the on again, off again. Well, I don't know about often. He does intervene in the on again, off again with Sam and Diane because they actually do clearly care about one another, but then like get proud and in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach intervenes. He also has some of the funniest lines, like because of his, not so brightness. It's hilarious. He's really funny. The 2 regulars, you remember them, Norm, played by George Wendt, and Cliff, played by John Ratzenberger. So Norm is an accountant who throughout the 11 seasons is often unemployed. He's married to Vera, who we never actually see her face. We see her kind of at one point, in one episode, the Thanksgiving Orphans episode. It's sort of the old trope of like wife complaint jokes. Is like all we know
the
about
old ball
Vera,
and
pretty
chain
much.
kind of thing.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Cliff, who's a blowhard who shares completely useless trivia with us in like every single episode, and everybody is kind of annoyed by him. Carla doesn't hesitate to say so. He's the mailman who's often, as you remember, wearing his uniform. After season 2, I can't remember, 2 or 3, Sam and Diane break up again, and it's kind of messy. And she actually ends up checking herself into a sanatorium, and that's where she meets Frasier. He is not her doctor, but that is where they meet. So while Diane was checked into a sanatorium, Sam falls off the wagon and he starts drinking again. And so Coach actually intervenes and asks Diane to come back to the bar to help Sam. And she does because she loves Coach. And she brings Frasier. And so that's how Frasier kind of gets integrated. But there's a whole story arc where Frasier asks her to go to Europe with him, and she does, somewhat reluctantly, and then he proposes while they're in Europe. And she calls back to the bar to tell Sam, like, hoping he will try to stop her, like, give her a reason not to get married. And he doesn't, but then he flies off to Europe to try and stop the wedding, and he doesn't make it to the right place. There's all kinds of misunderstandings, of course. It's a sitcom.
Sitcom shenanigans, yeah.
But she doesn't end up getting married. She leaves Frasier at the altar, which makes it hard for me to believe that Frasier then actually for the next 7 years becomes a regular at this bar, but whatever. So, so that's Diane and Frasier. I talked about Cliff and Norm. I talked about Carla. So that's the sort of first era. Coach, the actor who plays Coach, dies between 2 seasons, and they actually write that into the storyline that Coach passed away. Woody shows up. He was pen pals with Coach, and Sam's like, "You guys wrote letters to each other?" And he said, "No, we exchanged pens." Um,
I'm
so
sorry.
Woody shows up and needs a job and he ends up working as a bartender. And honestly, I'll just side note, I think that was one of the best and like most seamless character replacements that I can think of, right? Like we talked about in Night Court when the first sort of elderly female bailiff actress passed away, they replaced her with another elderly female bailiff actress who also passed away. Like this was, they didn't try to like recreate Coach because they knew they couldn't. Like part of the charm of that character was the longevity of his relationship with Sam. So they didn't try to like pretend like, oh, this other Coach. They did this other thing and it really worked. And Harrelson, I don't know, he did a great job. Anyway,
he's a fantastic actor who for years I thought was a bit dim because of this character.
He's such a good actor.
He's such a good actor that it took me seeing him as a villain in something else, because he got typecast because of this.
Right.
So it wasn't just this, but it was other things.
Right.
And it took seeing his range much, much later for me to realize, like, no, he's just a phenomenal actor.
Yeah. And his physical comedy is quite good as well.
Yeah.
Eventually, after 5 or 6 seasons, Sam and Diane finally do call it quits. Diane moves to California to try and break into writing. And Sam sells the bar to a corporation to go off to sail the world, and that doesn't work out. In between seasons, we don't actually see the sailing. And he comes back, and now Rebecca Howe is running the bar for the corporation. So that's the second era. Rebecca seems able to resist his wiles, at least in the beginning. And she is very ambitious. This is Kirstie Alley's character. They take that away from her. I'll get into that with my analysis.
So with what was going on with that, did they not expect to be renewed? Did Shelley Long want to be let out of her contract? Do you know what was going on?
I didn't
behind the scenes.
I didn't do any research into what was happening with the actors. To be frank, I didn't care. I was really more interested in what the
story was doing.
The story was doing, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Sam. From today's lens, the man is a harasser. Like there's no other word for it. He doesn't assault anyone. But there is a great deal of coercion that goes on that I guess we thought was charming in the 80s and 90s. It doesn't read now. Especially in the second era that I didn't watch as many episodes in. I did not watch as many episodes in the Rebecca Howe, like rewatch them, but I did sort of read up about, and even in the ones that I watched, like she says she's not interested repeatedly. And he keeps, like, he's just trying to wear her down. Like that's his actual strategy, is to wear her down. And the showrunners continue to show us, the viewer, that we should still like him. He is still our hero. You know, like this is somehow not noble, but normal and totally acceptable. And it leads to, specifically with Rebecca, like a sense of entitlement that is just gross. Like Sam does not look good to me on rewatch, like as a human being, you know? And on the one hand, I think the showrunners know that. They acknowledge it, right? He gets taken down for it. He gets humiliated often. But on the other hand, he also gets rewarded. He also gets accolades from, you know, the other characters and like sort of from life, right? Like, trying to think of like a specific episode that I want to share. So there's one episode where it's actually a two episode arc where he is sleeping with a woman and he finds out she's married and he instantly cuts it off once he finds out that she's married. Her husband shows up with a gun and like after hours, and they manage to like talk it out and it's going to be okay. But he takes the gun and puts it in his back pocket. And while he's doing that, the gun discharges. So he shoots himself in the ass. And he comes into the bar the next day and he's limping or whatever. And he lies and says that he chased off some armed robbers and got shot in the leg. Not the butt, but in the leg. And Diane senses something's not right. Like the story doesn't hold up. And she gets the truth out of him. But he had spun this yarn and the bar patrons like have called the news and stuff who come and like he's like being like
lauded as a hero.
Applauded as a hero. And Diane convinces him to come clean, that he needs to tell the truth because this isn't right and whatever. And he's going to. He actually picks up the phone and he's calling the newspaper to set the record straight. And oh, this is interesting, actually. He says, oh, well, hi, Emily. Yeah, this is Sam Malone. So the person who answers the phone is named Emily. And he says, oh, you did, huh? You saw him. And like, so we only hear his side. But she saw him and she thought he was cute and like, wow, what a hero. And so then he says, well, what time do you get off? So he's making a date with the person who answered the phone at the newspaper. Diane just leaves. And then in the second episode in this like to be continued arc, the husband of the former lover comes back and is like, I saw you on TV. You're getting all kinds of, heroics for this. And they end up, Diane comes back in. She forgot her purse or something. So the three of them are talking and she's talking to the guy, the husband, about how hard it is to love someone who is so flighty and makes bad choices and whatever. And she's obviously talking about Sam. And so they have this like vulnerable moment. So this embarrassing thing happens to Sam. And like he does the right thing by breaking it off with the married woman, but then this embarrassing thing happens and then he's going to make it right. But then the universe like rewards him for not making it right. And then he ends up actually getting closer to Diane as a result. And that happens again and again, where Sam is sort of taken down a peg because of his toxic masculinity and his womanizing ways, and then subsequently rewarded for it. Like this is a pattern throughout the show. It happens again and again and again. Similarly, the converse with Diane, right? In many ways, she's a feminist icon. She is this smart, independent woman. We see that she's often dressed very conservatively. Like she comes in with like high collars and like there's not a lot of skin showing on Shelley Long as this character. But we see she has lots of dates. And she has dates with Sam. She is humiliated again and again. And like her intellectualism, she's clearly very smart, but she also thinks very highly of herself. And we end up seeing her like flighty and like thinks she has talent that she doesn't actually have. So, as the nerdy kid and adolescent that was watching this, like Diane was certainly, at least to some extent, a self-insert, right? Because she was very smart. And yet she's never fully accepted because of it. And the showrunners make sure we understand that like She's not as smart as she thinks she is,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so there's this tension there that I think is the metaphor of giving with one hand and taking with the other is apt for both sort of the hypersexualized, almost predatory masculinity of Sam Malone and the independent, intellectual femininity of Diane Chambers. In fact, there was one episode that really bothered me that I did watch. The guys, it's this on again, off again, and they just butt heads. And Carla says to Sam, every woman wants to be controlled. I don't care what she says. That's what she wants. So you need to go in there and take control. And so he goes over to her apartment and knocks down the door. First he hurts himself trying and comes in and like forcibly kisses her and picks her up and walks her toward the bedroom. And she's like, let me change into something more flimsy, I think she says. I don't know. And so then she's like, you hear her on the phone. And then she comes out in this little negligee and she explains to him that she called the police. And there's obviously evidence that he broke in and they're on their way. Does he want some coffee? But she didn't actually call the police. She just was trying to teach him a lesson. And the episode ends with her saying, I did like being picked up. So there's a circuitous route to get there. And some of the stops, I'm like, oh, okay. But then the actual destination, I'm like, oh, that doesn't sit well. That does not sit well.
What I'm hearing, it sounds like with the character of Sam, it sounds like what we're getting is we are being asked to forgive his failings because he means well. We're being asked to be like, okay, so he's learned his lesson because he shot himself in the ass, but he stopped the affair as soon as he found out she was married. He got his comeuppance, okay, so he lied. He was about to do the right thing, but it's okay. On balance, it's okay. He means well. He's a good guy. It's all okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get that, like, that's how you treat men. But women, like, got to take them down a peg. Like, they don't let them get above their station. Like, they think they're smarter than they are. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that's the message that we were imbibing as children.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely something I know I internalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is some of what we're seeing is pushback now, where society is saying, like, no, that's not acceptable. We cannot treat half the population in these different ways. And we have not all men, but some men throwing tantrums about it.
Yeah. Yeah. While we're talking about sort of masculinity, and then we didn't say this, but by extension, sort of heteronormativity, I didn't name this in the postcards, but I'm just remembering there's one episode that actually like won an award from GLAAD. I think it was from the first season. It was fairly early, first or second season.
Wow, okay.
Where, this is interesting. So I want to share this. So what happens in this episode is Sam's former roommate and like best friend from baseball days has written a book, and he's doing the book release party at Cheers, and he's asked Sam to read it in advance. And of course, Sam didn't read it in advance. And they're telling stories about their wild days when they both were like on the road womanizing. It turns out the friend is gay and has come out of the closet. And those womanizing days were him like fighting the truth about himself. So Sam finds out while reporters are in the room who ask him about how he feels about this friend, I think his name's Tom, coming out of the closet. And Sam like, oh, like when he came out of the closet with that girl that he was, no, Sam, he's gay. And Tom's like, I asked you to read the book in advance. And the bar, the patrons are like, you gotta put a stop to this because we don't want to become like Vito's Pub, which is now a gay bar. And Sam's like, no, he does think about it for a moment, but then he's like, no, he's my friend. we've been friends for a long time and I don't care. And so, so he accepts his friend and it makes the news and some guys show up and they're like, we saw you on the news with Tom. That's so great. Thank you for doing that. And so the bar patrons assume these three new guys are gay and they want Sam to throw them out because they don't want Cheers to become a gay bar. And Diane's like, you guys are Neanderthals. That's ridiculous. And she gives them a hard time about it. And they want Sam to throw these guys out. He won't. They say, what kind of bar do you want this place to be? And he says, not the kind where I throw people out. And so he does the right thing. Good guy. The patrons then trick these three new guys into leaving. They say, oh, it's like the third Thursday of the month. We always do early whatever. And they all leave and start putting the chairs up on the tables. And so the three guys leave. Like, this is the weirdest bar I've ever been in. It closes at 7:30 on a Thursday. And then all the regular patrons come back and Diane reveals that those guys weren't gay. And in fact, one of them hit on her. These two guys are gay. They kiss Norm. So for 82 or 83, whenever this was released, I'm sure that was very progressive. And it did. It won some sort of like thanks from GLAAD. And the openness with which the patrons are like, get them out of here, grossed me out.
Yeah.
Like the first part with the friend that he used to hang out with, like that part, like about a personal relationship and sort of coming to that actually sort of still resonated for me.
Sure.
The rest of it, I was like,
and we're still supposed to sympathize with like Cliff and Norm
with Norm and Cliff. And like Norm was one of the ones who was like, I don't want this place to be Vito's. So yeah, I think you named it really well, that like there's a degree to which he means well. Like he's basically a good guy, is meant to just forgive everything. I think that's true of Norm too. Because obviously the showrunners were making a point that this homophobia was ridiculous and misplaced. And yet one of our beloved regulars was leading the charge in the homophobia.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me circle around to Carla, your favorite character. Repeatedly, there are moments when she says or implies, Sam, I'm yours if you want me. Right? Never anything between them. And at one point, she actually says explicitly, in what I watched, in the like 30 or so that I watched, she says, Sam, do you ever think about you and me getting together? And he says, of course I did, Carla. But I know you're too much woman for me. And she says, don't you forget it. So like he turns her down in a way that like serves her ego. But this guy, 1,000 women, they say, right? But why not Carla? And like, I guess the generous read would be that he cares about her.
Yeah.
Which is still kind of gross.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's actually what we're meant to imply. So she doesn't look the way he wants his girlfriends to look, right? She's short and dark. She's got really curly hair. She's not tall and willowy with blonde hair. And I didn't see that at all. I don't think when we were kids. But in this rewatch, I don't know if it's just because the ones I happened to watch were ones where she expressed interest in him. Because, out of 270, maybe I happened to watch the ones where that was more prevalent. But it bothered me in this rewatch, like for Carla's sake. I don't know that I have anything else to say about that. But there's something weird. I guess I do. There's some tension there in thinking about gender. Because to be accepted, like this whole show is about belonging. You listen to the theme song, you want to go where everybody knows your name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even the start, making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Like this, from the beginning, from the theme song, this show is about belonging. Carla belongs. Diane never quite does. She belongs because she's able to code switch as one of the guys. But she has to give up her femininity with them, at least, in order to do so. Now, she doesn't give it up altogether because we see that she has multiple sexual partners. Like I said, she's pregnant 4 times throughout the run of the show. Like she doesn't give up her femininity and sexuality altogether, but they live outside of Cheers. In Cheers, she's one of the guys in order to belong.
This fits with this idea I've been like playing with about how there's no winners in beauty culture. I had this feeling, and in part from taking in messages from stuff like Cheers and all the things from our childhood, because I don't really remember that tension between Carla and Sam, but I did remember being like kind of spoon-fed the idea that Carla wasn't supposed to be attractive, even though I loved her curly hair. And I liked how petite she was. Like I liked that she was so small, but she was not conventionally attractive, so she could be with the guys. But the thing is, if you are conventionally attractive, you can't be with the guys, which is part of why Diane is separate in some ways. It's also like the intellectualism and other stuff. But all the women that Sam dates, let's say, and then like Rebecca, part of their separateness is because they are conventionally attractive. And so like no matter where you fall on the beauty hierarchy, you're not fully human, because you're either like an object, like, oh, you're beautiful, so you're not one of us, or you're not a woman because you're one of us, so you're not beautiful. As a child, I had this thought that, like, you know, okay, if you meet the beauty standards, okay, finally I can relax and people will treat me like a person.
Yeah,
You
no.
know, if I just, you know, didn't have the body, you know, the Semitic body hair and didn't have the weight on my hips, like people would actually treat me like a human being. And then I met someone who actually met the beauty standards, and no, they weren't treating her like a human being. They were treating her like a sex object.
Right. Right.
So like no matter where you are on, and that's, the theme song is about men.
Yeah. Well, the whole show is about men. I mean, no, there are no women regulars. Like women come into the bar as dates or even in groups, but there are no regulars who are women. The only regulars are characters, are Diane, Carla, Rebecca, and Lilith. And so they're all either work there or Lilith is Frasier's significant other. So let's talk about Rebecca. On the one hand, feminist, powerful, studied, knows what she's doing, ambitious, like she's going places. And then she gets torn down for it over and over and over again. She becomes, by the end, this just sort of gold digging, whiny character who eventually like gives up on the gold digging and settles for a plumber who she gets married to in the last couple of episodes. And she and Sam do have a romance. He wears her down. And they make the point, even I did not watch very many from the Rebecca era. I watched about 1 per season in the Rebecca era. But even what I watched, like the corporation realizes that the bar was turning more of a profit under Sam's management. They fire her and promote him because he's now an employee of the corporation. And then Sam like begs for her job back and gets her back with all of these conditions. So like she's yeah, she's meant to be very good at all of these things, but Sam does it better and he doesn't even like doing it. Like he can't figure out how to use the computer and he doesn't know why it's working. He's just so charming that the bar does well under him. Like it's just
Insulting.
it is insulting. It is insulting. Yeah.
And like
Ay.
a real Rebecca in the real world, if that happened, would not accept that job.
No.
She would say, absolutely not. You're fucking kidding me.
And this Rebecca does do that. In fact, to get back at Sam when she realizes what has happened, because initially he just tells her he got her job back and doesn't tell her about the conditions. So she goes out to dinner with him. And then she finds out about the conditions because the boss comes into the restaurant and is like, I was surprised you were willing to come back. And so she finds out what all the conditions are. And so she tells Sam, tells him what she wants to do. She's going to take him back to her place where there's a hot tub, and she whispers in his ear all these things that we don't hear, but are clearly very sexy. And then she says, okay, I'm going to go. And he says, you need to give me a minute, which as a kid, I'm sure I did not understand.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And she just leaves. And he can't follow because he's got an erection.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't want to get up from the table. And the waiter comes over and is like, can I get you anything else, Mr. Malone? And he says, yeah, can you make another chocolate souffle for me? And Paul's like, you realize that will take 45 minutes. And Sam's like, yeah, I know. Rebecca goes back down to the bar because they were at the restaurant Melville's, which is above the Cheers is in the basement. Melville's is on the ground floor. And she says, Sam's going to be up there for a while and tell him when he gets back that I'm gone or whatever. And then Woody gives her a message that had come in that I don't even remember what it was. I don't remember what it was, but it was something that made it worth her staying. So she does the thing, she grabs a tray and starts waiting tables because that was part of the condition, was that she needed to spend some time as an actual cocktail waitress. So anyway, but your point is well taken. It's also the case, the gold digging thing. She talks, it's real different now when she talks about wanting someone like a Donald Trump to marry.
God.
She names other people too, but she wants a rich boyfriend or husband. The treatment of Rebecca, when I think about your question that you often ask about what does an author owe their characters, I feel like the Charles brothers and James Burrows did Rebecca dirty. I think that they were unfair to that character in the way that they treated her as this sort of, I don't even know, punching bag sort of, about feminine ambition.
Yeah, how dare you want to run this bar? How dare you have ambition? How dare you do this job when he sold the bar?
Yeah.
It's not your fault that he sold the bar.
Right. So, oh man, there's so much to talk about with there's so many episodes, and so I know there's stuff that I'm forgetting. For instance, I think there are another commentator counted 2 Black female characters the entire run. There is a Black male character who shows up at least twice, who is a coworker of Cliff's, who he uses to intimidate other people. So it's about sort of fear of Black men, which is kind of gross. So, we could do a whole nother episode about race. I thought about asking you to do part 1 about the Diana era and part 2 about the Rebecca era. But
it's a long-running podcast. We can always come back.
We can always come back to it.
Now, I do want, I know we're running short on time, but so we don't end on a totally negative note, can we end on talking about maybe the great writing?
Yeah. This is not just great writing, great writing, great physical comedy. The physical comedy is incredible. This in the episode that I told you about with the husband of the woman, the affair partner, at one point, Diane distracts the guy with the gun, and Sam tries to kick the gun out of his hands, but he still has the gunshot wound in his butt. And so he kicks out, he totally misses and like falls. And it's hilarious. It is so funny. And the writing, I mean, you named that the pilot is often held up as like a platonic ideal of a pilot. And I'll just say why a little bit. Like, we get to know all of these characters and we get to know their backstories. There is exposition, but it is integrated into the dialogue in such natural ways. It never feels like you're being like, meanwhile, in the backstory, here's like, it all actually makes sense, and it's delivered in ways that are funny, like really funny. Like I watched the pilot and I laughed out loud multiple times from the pilot. And even in the 30 or so that I watched, despite all of the complaints I've just laid in terms of like what was underneath of it, I laughed a lot. This show is very funny. It is very funny. And unfortunately, it leans on some of these tropes and stereotypes and cultural phenomena that are gross. But the actual wordplay, the actual comedic timing is phenomenal. And I didn't even get into it, like thinking about the intellectualism in the later episodes that I watched. Frasier has bought a rare book copy of Tale of Two Cities, and nobody knows what he's talking about. They don't, like, he mentions like Miss Havisham and they don't know what he's talking about. And so he ends up reading Tale of Two Cities to them and he's losing them. So he alters the text to be more interesting and introduces like helicopters and guns and stuff. And the bar loves it. They love it so much. They're like, what are you going to read to us next? And like, then Lilith is there later and they mention something about Tale of Two Cities. And she's like, excuse me, what? Like, it doesn't, And so that's sort of an interesting thing. I didn't even get into this, but with the intellectualism, like there's it's a give and take again, because there's a degree to which as the viewer, you feel smarter than Cliff and Norm because you know what he's talking about. But then also like Frasier gets cut down or Diane gets cut down, like both, they do both. Like the writers of Cheers, maybe this is what made them so great. They were able to have their cake and eat it too. In terms of like allowing the audience to feel smarter than some through the person of this, intellectual, whether it was Frasier or Diane, without actually allowing Frasier or Diane to be the hero. So you also got to feel smarter than, actually, that's what it is. The viewer gets to feel smarter than them as well, because then they do something ridiculous that makes that, that sort of brings them down too. So in the end, like the viewer feels superior in some way to everyone. And I think that probably is a piece of what made the writing so enjoyable. Also, just the wordplay was great. The actor's timing was great. Like, I don't know. I have one partner, we were watching one episode, and he was like, Ted Danson has had such a career. He doesn't seem like that good an actor. Like, he must be easy to work with or something that he keeps getting these roles. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But the timing of the ensemble together. So I think all of those things actually were quite good. The actors, the direction, the writing, it just...
I think, Ted Danson's comedic timing is impeccable, which is something that can't be taught.
Yeah.
I think he deserved an Emmy just for his evil laugh in the last episode.
In The Good Place.
Good Place, the first season of Good Place.
I love that. I wanted that as like a ringtone. It was
I know.
So good. Yeah. Anyway, so let me see if I can reflect back the stuff. Like there's so much, and there's so much more. I mean, there's so much more. But we talked about the ways that there's a lot of give and take, giving with one hand and taking in the other. in this sitcom. We have Sam Malone, who is a womanizer and by today's standards is really a harasser. He's coercive, he objectifies, he does not treat women as people. It's pretty gross. But as you pointed out, like, he's basically a good guy and we're supposed to just kind of roll with it and maybe even find it charming. We have Diane Chambers, who is an intellectual and she is independent. And so we sort of have that, like, the feminism baked into this independent woman. She lives on her own and she does what she wants to do. She dates around. So she's not sexually repressed, is what I'm getting at with that. But then we also have her taken down again and again and again and like sort of humiliated in different ways. Similarly with Rebecca Howe, who is Kirstie Alley's character, who is this ambitious, powerful, driven character who the show humiliates, basically. Like turns her into this whiny, gold-digging. She calls herself a loser, and she kind of is. And she has moments like the one that I named where she embarrasses Sam by turning him on and then like leaving him stuck there at the restaurant. But like as a character arc, it's pretty gross. There's also Carla, who is in some ways the epitome of, you named, sort of the fact that women cannot win when it comes to beauty standards. So you either are at the top of the beauty hierarchy and are treated only as an object, or you're at the bottom and you can be one of the guys, but then you can't actually be fully human because you're not seen in your femininity and your sexuality. Now, I think Carla Tortelli does have sexuality, but she can't have it with these guys. And the fact that she is attracted to Sam and makes that very plain, and he's sleeping with pretty much everything that moves, but not her, is there was a lesson in that you and I imbibed as children. We talked briefly about Woody Harrelson and his character Woody, and then Coach Ernie Pantuso as sort of the comic relief in the heart of the bar and this, I don't even know if I want to call it a family, but this sort of found group of comrades. You named that Woody Harrelson is actually quite a good actor, but got typecast and you thought he was kind of dim because he played this dim character. It was the way that you were introduced to him. I named that the Coach to Woody transition was actually really, really smart because they didn't try to like just replace the exact person of Coach, but they found a different identity that could play a similar role. And that was really smart. We talked briefly about the fact that there are no women in this bar except for the people who work there or significant others, at least not regulars. And the fact that, you know, this show, this song is about men. What am I forgetting? We landed with the fact that this show is very funny. Comedic timing, the writing, the directing, it's all very funny. And that it had some, you know, really great writing. The pilot being held up as one of the best pilots that's ever been written for a sitcom. There's so much more about this TV show that I didn't get to. We will have to record a show we forgot to say, and there will still be more that I didn't say. And I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to name.
You said something about it being unbelievable that Frasier would keep coming back to the bar, considering how he came to know this group of characters.
Yeah, for sure. And like Kelsey Grammer's delightful. I'm glad they kept him as a character, but I had to like sort of hit the I believe button that he would continue to show up there because he was still holding a torch for Diane, which I guess is maybe you could argue
why he kept showing up.
He continued to show up. But yeah.
You did mention the one episode that got recognition
the
from
GLAAD Award.
Yeah.
Yeah. That episode where the underlying theme was that the homophobia that our regulars expressed was ridiculous and unfounded, which was progressive, especially for 82 or 83. And we're meant to just forgive it in our guise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, next week, you're taking on a behemoth.
I am. A little bit of a behemoth. I'm bringing you my deep thoughts on Star Wars A New Hope.
Just A New Hope.
Just A New Hope. Because if I wanted to do all of Star Wars, we'd be here all millennia.
Well, that's its own show.
Yes.
That's not an episode. That is its own show. Okay. Well,
So I'll see you in a galaxy a long time ago.
Far, far away.
Far, far away.
This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?